friends. I'm Bonnie Keene.
And I'm Nan Gurley. Pull up a chair and join us for a kitchen table conversation.
We'd like to invite you to explore the lives of the women of the Bible. We know we're going to find encouragement and the faith we need to keep going.
And there's always a place at the table for you.
Here we go. Grab your reruns of Desperate Housewives, ladies, because today we're going to look at the life of Tamar, the childless widow. Also, a quick reminder, if you'd like to purchase a copy of our Women Who Dare to Believe Bible studies, you can reach us at our Facebook page or at womenwhodaretobelieve.com.
Breaking news. Family of Judah rocked by scandal. Who let the twins out? For decades, rumors have swirled about Judah, the well-known son of Jacob, Israel's patriarch. It started years ago with suspicious claims of Judah's participation in the disappearance of his youngest brother, Joseph. The story grows more suspicious as we learn that he broke ranks with his Hebrew brothers by choosing to move to Canaan and marry a Canaanite woman. Their marriage produced 3 sons. Without going into the sordid details, News and Notes reporters have learned that Judah was seduced by his daughter-in-law, who got away with more than just his credit cards and personal ID.
We kind of feel like we should have a disclaimer at the start of this podcast. It's a little bit R-rated. The life of today's heroine of the Bible is it's kind of one of those nitty-gritty, not so nice and neat stories. I keep thanking God that it's in the Bible because it helps, show how God is not afraid of anything messy, but it gets a little gross at times. And it's the kind of story, however, that gives us real hope and hope to the broken. So this is a story of a childless widow. She's defending herself and she's fighting for a righteous cause. A story of a woman living in a corrupt family, risking everything to protect herself and her family's rights.
If there had been a media machine back then, what would the headlines have said? Tamar's whole story, from beginning to end, is contained in Genesis chapter 38. Now, it's very interesting because Tamar is mentioned more. She's actually mentioned a total of 3 times in Scripture. She's mentioned after the whole story in Genesis 38. Her story is briefly told again in 1 Chronicles chapter 2 in a list of the 12 sons of Israel. And then again her name is brought up centuries later in the book of Ruth. And then again in Matthew chapter 1 in the genealogy of Jesus, she's mentioned. So this woman is a big deal. Mm-hmm. And it's in chapter 38 of Genesis that we read the whole story. Now, the previous chapter 37 ends with a verse that says, quote, "Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. Now, Joseph's cruel and jealous brothers are happy because their younger brother is finally out of the way and gone for good. Just as a refresher, why did they hate him so much? Joseph had told them about 2 dreams he'd had where he saw them all bowing down to him. And so they sold him into slavery and got rid of him and thought, good riddance, problem solved. No older brothers in this family will ever bow down to a younger brother."
They had no idea that the story was not over. While they were working really hard to thwart the plans of God, God was working on doing a major reversal. So Moses, who was the writer of Genesis, stops telling Joseph's story for a moment and inserts chapter 38. And Moses turns the spotlight away from Joseph and shines it on his big brother, Judah. So this chapter is the beginning of the written history of the tribe of Judah. So why is that important? Oh my goodness. Because one day, everybody, you know this, a descendant of that tribe will be called the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
So how does Tamar's story begin? It starts with Judah moving away from his brothers and living in Canaan. It's interesting to think about why he did this. Did he just feel too guilty? Did he automatically think of what he did to Joseph every time he looked at his other guilty brothers? Were they always whispering about what they did and arguing about whose fault it was? After all, Judah was the one who suggested they sell him to the slave traders instead of killing him.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it?
Because he interceded.
Yeah,
and
it gives you a little more compassion for him later on.
Absolutely.
It does for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, though, among the brothers, there had to have been a lot of finger pointing going on. Whatever his reasons, Judah moved away from his family and went to Canaan. This was not a good choice. God had made it clear that his people were not to live there or intermarry with idol worshippers. Judah ignored this, and he married a woman of Canaan and had 3 boys.
Yep, ignored it. Okay. So as the head of the house, it was his job to choose wives for his 3 sons. This is interesting. He chose a Canaanite woman named Tamar as a wife for E-R, ladies. His firstborn son was named I'm like, did they just run out of ideas? She just name him. She was worn out. Name him
Or maybe she just went in
labor,
labor, and he said, "That's the name, right?"
It's a horrible name. But the Bible does tell us that was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord killed him. That's pretty severe.
Yeah,
he was evil in God's eyes. Thinking about Tamar, this could not have been easy to be married to someone like who was seen as evil in God's eyes. Who knows what that marriage was like?
Horrible.
Yeah. So maybe she was a little bit relieved when he was gone. The Bible doesn't tell us. We're just kind of wondering. But Judah then told his second son, better name this time, Onan, O-N-A-N. It's better than Onan was supposed to marry Tamar and have sons by her. Now, why?
Well, this was an ancient custom.
Yes.
If a man died without leaving a son, this was a horrible loss. A person's memory was preserved through his name and his descendants. It also ensured that the land was kept in the family if the brother married the widowed sister-in-law.
That's right.
One commentary put it this way: in order to maintain the family line and the name of the deceased, a brother or another near relative would marry the man's widow and father a child that would carry on the dead man's name.
Right.
This was called a levirate or levirate marriage, from a Latin word meaning the husband's brother. Now, this was actual Mosaic law.
Yes, I really love telling everyone about this. This is a very critical part of understanding this story. This was a law that was they knew it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the law of Moses.
Law of Moses. So Judah wanted to guarantee the line of his firstborn son. That's how the blessing came. And he would do this through Tamar, so that line would never die out. Onan agrees to do this, but get this, girls. He has sex with Tamar, but he secretly makes sure that no eggs are fertilized in the process. This is our R rating kind of part of the R rating of the story. So use your imagination. I guess I would say this. He ends the deed before he leaves behind any of his sperm, if that makes sense. He kind of had a great time, but didn't leave any responsibility behind him that would come with fulfilling this custom. Okay, he knows the custom as well, the Levirate law, right?
Yeah.
So why the son of this dead brother would receive a double portion of the inheritance, like Nan said. So if Onan had a son by Tamar, that son would get more of the inheritance than Onan's son.
Right.
So Onan was all about this money. All about the money. He had no intention of fathering a son by Tamar. And this was a very displeasing moment again to God. He was displeasing, so God somehow had him, we don't know how, had him killed as well.
Yeah, the scripture says
and this
specifically
is
that.
a different time. This is a shame and honor culture. It's a different way of living than we understand, but this was the structure in the family and how the blessing would continue.
Right.
So 2 sons now have not fulfilled this.
And Tamar is now 2 for 2.
Yeah.
When it comes to dead husbands. So, Judah has one more son, but he's too young and cannot marry Tamar and serve to continue the line of his dead brothers. Judah was actually relieved at this point. He thinks Tamar is bad luck. He has no intention of letting his youngest son go near her.
How interesting is it that Judah assumed it was her fault? You know, I mean, he didn't think about factoring his sons' lives into this or
And
how
their
they were treating
hideous behavior. Yeah, she's considered
bad luck.
Bad luck.
Yeah.
So Judah lies and tells Tamar, go back home to your father. He promises her that as soon as son number 3 is old enough, he'll bring Tamar back into the family and plan the wedding.
So Tamar goes home. Canaanite family?
Yeah.
Does she go home?
Back to the idol
So back to
worshipers.
the idol worshippers. She goes home and she waits and waits and waits and no texting, no phone never rings. So she's kind of figuring out what is going on now. She knows at this point that the third son is old enough and grown that she should rightfully be married to him. So she knows Judah wants her permanently out of the family, out of the running, out of this whole picture. And as a widow, now this Tamar living in her father's house would mean she had no future with no children and a life with no purpose.
It's the other thing about the culture we have to understand.
Totally different for women than it is now. And as the wife of Judah's firstborn son, she knows that she has the right to be the mother of the heir. But she has no intention. Tamar has a lot of spine.
She does.
She has no intention of remaining barren and a widow. So she's going to take action. It's going to be interesting. Hold on, ladies. And demand her rights of motherhood under this Levitical law.
That's right. The behavior of Judah and his sons kind of makes you wonder why she would fight to be a part of this family. Judah is the kind of guy who sells his brother into slavery. He raised a couple of evil sons who were so wicked that God killed them. And then he turned his daughter-in-law out of the house. Judah was blind to the truth that the reason his sons died was because they were disobedient and evil in God's sight. Instead, he blamed his daughter-in-law, who was a victim of his son's horrible behavior, and he was afraid Tamar had some sort of evil power and that she would kill his youngest son too. And now Judah is refusing to obey God's laws and be a responsible head of his house. Why does Tamar care at all about being part of this family?
It's just a great question, isn't it? Maybe in the middle of all this dysfunction, Tamar saw something of the God of Judah. She saw it past him.
Yeah.
She came out of a Canaanite family, so something, it's like when we were talking about Rahab.
Right.
She knew something of the people of Israel, made her believe that there was a God that was different.
Right.
So maybe she heard a little conversation somewhere about Yahweh, and maybe she knew enough about God to know he was different from the gods that she grew up worshiping. We only can wonder that, but it's interesting how she fought for this. She wanted to be a part of this clan and to continue the family line of Judah. And she was willing to enter into some risky business to make it happen. So Tamar hears through the grapevine that Judah is going to a big feast. It's the celebration of the end of the sheep shearing season. Oh my goodness, I said that. Sheep shearing season. And there is a party about to happen.
Right. Well, she also heard through the grapevine that Judah's wife died.
That's right. Oh, I forgot. Yes.
Yeah. He's single.
He's single man on the town about to go to a party.
Sheep shearing is done. It's time to celebrate. Okay.
Right?
She also knows Judah's character.
Yes.
All too well. She knows his weaknesses. She knows how to get his attention. So she dresses like a temple prostitute with a veil hiding her face. Right. She sits at the gates of the city and waits for him to come whistling down the road.
She knows this man. Okay. Let's talk for a second. This has been so interesting for Nan and I to research temple prostitutes. Okay. Whoever thinks you're going to do that, well, hey. They were not like your common streetwalker who's, a hooker looking people in the face, putting a ton of makeup on, attempting to be physically alluring as possible. The temple girls were different. Like Nan just said, they veiled their faces. Now, the reason they did this was not to be demure, but they veiled their faces so that the act of sexual intercourse would somehow seem less physical and resemble a so-called act of worship. This is a guy. A guy had to come up with this. This is a way to try to make this an act of worship offered to the idol of one's choice. And this was what this probably made him feel okay. This is what he preferred. Maybe he felt a little less guilty about his promiscuity, since sex with a temple prostitute wasn't quite as sexy as the other kind. We don't know. But sacred prostitutes brought in the highest dollar. Kind of sounds like trafficking in some ways, doesn't it?
Totally.
The veils maintained this weird fiction, that the sexual tryst would be spiritual in some kind of spiritual negotiation. Okay, right.
Convenient.
Yeah. Convenient for the men. But these sacred prostitutes were tied directly to the goddess Asherah. If you've heard of Ishtar.
Same one.
Same one. And these women were thought to become virgins over and over again. Isn't that convenient? So that was very convenient. Bizarre.
Judah rows down this little river of denial. And he approaches her.
Yeah.
and asks for her favors. She asks what he's willing to pay for them. And he tells her he'll send her a sheep from his flock. That's kind of interesting.
It is.
Judah used a sheep from his flock to deceive his dad.
Dad, I hadn't thought of that.
A few years earlier, he killed one and rolled Joseph's coat of
he
many
sure
colors
did.
in the blood. Then he told his dad that Joseph must have been killed by a wild animal. His deceptive tactics are taking on a theme.
The sheep thing had worked for him, right?
Yeah.
It had been working for him. So Tamar asked for a pledge to make sure that he would keep his word. Now, this is very interesting. She wanted 3 things, ladies. She wanted Judah's signet, his cord, and his staff. Now, let's talk about this. They were all tokens of how you would be identified. A signet, was that a ring?
Yeah.
A ring was like what he would need to sign a contract to make his business transactions legal.
You put it down in the hot wax.
Hot wax, that's like, yes. Now, his staff was a symbol of identity and authority and power, maybe respect of some kind. In essence, Tamar was asking for his credit cards, his identity, his driver's license, his seal of authority. And he says, okay, fine, sure. He just gives them to her.
What?
Well,
He was willing to part with all these valuable things just for a quick roll in the hay.
he must have done this before. That's all I can think
Oh,
of.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Esau being willing to sell his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of soup. There's a pattern
man.
here of not treasuring your treasures.
Yeah, that's good.
What are we willing to give away just for immediate satisfaction of a craving?
That's good.
That's worth going very deep
Yes.
into, guys.
Yes.
Think about that. Treasuring our treasures.
More than him, more than doing the right thing.
Right. There's something really wrong here. And it's the same as rolling over and allowing yourself to be robbed without putting up a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
That is deception.
Exactly. It also makes me wonder, Nan, if the temple prostitutes they cost the most. So the men, the clients they would have would be more well respected in society and probably have the most money.
Didn't think about that.
That this was probably what they did all the time. Give me your signet ring. They kind of hold them hostage till the act was over.
Well, and I guess Judah wasn't embarrassed
No.
at the idea of someone going, oh, hey,
No.
she's got your this is, oh, yeah, I forgot to pick it up. I mean, there was seemingly no shame or embarrassment.
And she knew that he had done this, that he would go to visit temple prostitutes. It wasn't a secret.
Yeah, that's really sad.
So back to Tamar. Okay. Concealing her identity and masking her voice. She would have had to do both. The veil would have worked, but she would have had to speak a little bit differently, probably.
Yeah.
She deceived her father-in-law and had sex with him.
Gosh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ugh. So he leaves all of his valuables with her and he goes back home. That's bizarre.
Yeah, it is.
And she goes back home.
To her father's house.
Yeah, with more than his valuables because now she is pregnant. Bing, bing. Okay, this is definitely very disgusting to us, right? I mean, just it's disgusting. A daughter-in-law having sex with her father-in-law, nothing new under the sun. It's hideous, but strangely, the Bible does not condemn Tamar for what she did. This is one of the most interesting points to me of her story.
Yeah.
The Bible does not condemn her, and so we're not going to judge her at this moment either.
No.
Because in her culture, Tamar did what was within the law to do.
Right.
So legally, she had the right to have a child by the nearest relative to her dead husband. Dangerous plan, but it worked.
3 months later, Tamar's belly begins to grow and word gets around fast. Gossip spreads. Judah hears about this, that his daughter-in-law has quote unquote played the harlot. That's what the gossip mill said. Your daughter-in-law, guess what? She has played
the harlot.
Well, he quickly calls for her execution.
Unbelievable.
Well, and this, I know. How
He's just
self-righteous.
done. He's just.
How self-righteous.
Yeah.
Maybe he was thinking, now I can lawfully get rid of this woman and be
That's
free of any
right.
obligation to marry her to my youngest son. So Judah demands her to be brought forth and burned.
Oh,
what a
my
hypocrite.
goodness.
Tamar has been waiting for this moment. Before they can light the funeral pyre, she stands tall. She looks Judah in the eye. And the Amplified Translation quotes her as saying, quote, make out clearly, I pray you, to whom these belong.
Oh, and here goes the music. The music is underneath the soundtrack.
She holds up the signet ring, the cord, the staff. I mean, talk about a powerful closing argument.
She was so smart and
She was.
so clever. And to his credit, Judah in this moment, I don't know if it's credit or not, he was caught, but he humbles himself.
He does.
Immediately, doesn't make an excuse, humbles himself, and for a brief moment, remembers the laws of Yahweh and God's covenant with his people. He seems to see the truth about how grossly he has behaved, how he's mistreated this daughter of his family. So Judah, in front of everyone, exonerates her and says, she is more righteous than I, since I did did not give her my son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big
He admits
confession.
it. Basically he admits he did not fulfill the responsibilities to Tamar. And instead of placing himself on the funeral pyre beside her, which is what he really deserved,
Right.
he lets Tamar move back into his house under his covering. And the Bible is comforting here when it tells us that Judah never again had sex with her. I'm sure he didn't.
I'm sure
But
she was relieved.
that is a relief. Oh my goodness. But at least his morals were kind of coming back to him in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
He came to his senses. And Tamar is taken back into the tribe of Judah. And through Tamar, the family line of God will continue because God is never finished.
Hallelujah. And let's hope this immoral hypocrite really did some soul searching. We know that a few years later, he goes to Egypt with his brothers and he meets up with Joseph and repents of that sin too.
That's
So
right.
he's still a work in progress.
He is.
Like all of us.
He's pliable. His heart is pliable.
Yes, it is. Tamar's desperate act happened because Judah had been faithless. One commentator makes the great point of saying that the most desperate acts happen because someone else has not fulfilled their responsibilities.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah,
Wait,
it
tell
is.
me that again.
The most desperate acts happen because someone else has not fulfilled their
Some
responsibilities.
injustice has happened.
Injustice.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's good. Nan.
Yeah, it is.
So, and her story, ladies, gets more and more interesting. She's now pregnant, right? She's wanted this for, a long time. 6 months later, she goes into labor.
Oh, boy.
And here we enter another wonderful midwife.
midwives!
If you've not heard our midwife episode, please go back and find it. It's one of the earlier podcasts.
The midwives of Egypt.
Midwives are so important in the Old Testament history. It's interesting how they play such an important role in Bible history. So she gives birth. This is a double blessing too, to twin boys.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. Playing the classic game of me first. The twins push and shove around in the womb on their way out. Her birthing is not easy, birthing. Zerah pushed his arm out first. And the midwife tied a scarlet thread on his wrist to proclaim him as the firstborn. But then they keep wrestling, and he puts his arm back in the womb.
Ouch.
And the other boy makes his move and pushes the one with the bracelet out of the way, and he comes out. So the midwife has to comment on this unusual moment and says, "What a breaking forth you have made for yourself." They fought it out coming out.
Yeah, they did.
And she promptly names him Perez, which means breaking forth in honor of his dominating the wrestling match. It's wild. Poor Tamar.
No
Man,
kidding.
she doesn't have an easy life.
Right.
So soon after, the older brother followed his lead and arrived wearing that scarlet bracelet on his wrist. Mm-hmm. The midwife exclaims again, and she names this baby Zerah, which means scarlet. And I am now utterly exhausted just thinking about what she just went through in labor.
Well, I'm just glad the custom of naming children after something that happens in the birth process has died away. I mean, we'd have people walking around today with names like, "Hey, how you doing, forceps face?" "Oh, here comes womb ripper. Hey,
Womb
how
ripper."
you doing? Okay, we should stop.
Face.
So Tamar is overjoyed with this double blessing. 2 boys. She didn't know it that day, but her
Double
2
blessing.
sons became ancestors of King David. And we know who came from King David.
Yes, we do.
And it was Perez, the younger one, who became the ancestor of Jesus.
Isn't this amazing that a child born of incest
Oh.
is an ancestor of Christ?
Yes, it is.
The mercy of God in that
Yeah.
is staggering. The plans of God for his children can look really strange. That's what I come away with this story. This is bizarre. But this verse in Jeremiah comes to mind again. We know the plans God says I have made for you. Plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. So God spoke these words to his people when they were in captivity in Babylon. That's when Jeremiah was written. Not on a sunny day when life was easy, but in the middle of very unthinkable hard times.
Yes.
Yeah.
God also says to Jeremiah in chapter 1, verse 5, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you." So how long has he known us? Since when?
Before we were born.
That's right. Before you were conceived.
we were conceived, he knew.
Before-
That is something I'm never going to understand.
Well,
foreknown.
He knew us before he ever said, "Let there be light."
Yes, I know.
It goes back that far.
Foreknown.
Right. He didn't start knowing you when your
September,
parents
when I was
your
born.
parents were married.
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
It was before he said, "Let there be light."
There's a stunningness to that. That's just
This means that he intentionally made each of us for a specific reason,
Yep.
for his delight and for his glory. Now, modern science can explain how sperm and egg unite and how cells divide
That's right.
and on, but modern science can't tell us why.
very good point.
Only God gives meaning and purpose to conception. And that should give us a ton of hope and comfort.
Amen. And we live in a culture that only looks at the egg and the sperm.
The how. They look at the how, not the why.
And we're surrounded by people desperate for meaning because they don't know there's a purpose. They don't know they were foreknown. They feel lost.
It's the total game changer if you can lay hold of this.
And also, just looking at a sperm and an egg, that clinically allows you to abort children.
Yeah, it does.
Without feeling any shame.
It takes the why away.
That's what we're living in right now.
Yeah, it is.
But God's mercy and his inclusion of this Canaanite woman, once again, somebody outside the covering of Israel.
Outside the covenant.
Outside the covenant is brought into the genealogy of Jesus. That's a picture of God's gracious inclusion of all nations in the plan of salvation. He's so magnificent. Tamar and Judah's behavior is something we wouldn't want to do. It's not something we would emulate or speak highly of. We would never even talk about it. But their story shows the mercy of God on all sinners. I mean, I'm just going to say this right now. I've been listening to a powerful teacher, Paul Washer, speak about Romans 3, that all have sinned and fallen short. No, not one. And he said, it's like the Lord needed us to know, because he said so often we go, oh, we're all sinners, but there's that one good. And he goes, no, not one. Not one of us.
None is righteous.
None is righteous.
None of us seeks after God on our own.
None of us
If
do.
you're seeking after him, it's because he's been seeking you.
That's it right there. And this story is a living color revelation that nothing and no one can derail his plans when he's got his hand on you. Nobody's too wicked, trashy, sordid, messy, disgusting that God's not going to get involved. If he wants to redeem that situation, he can take the worst that Satan can throw at a person and he can proclaim his right to turn that circumstance around to his glory and for the good of his people. God, Nan says this to me all the time, and she's right. God is into reversals.
Yes, he is.
Reversals.
There's a symbolic and intentional parallel between the birth of the twins and Judah and his brothers.
Yeah.
God had made it clear that Joseph would one day rule over his brothers, even though he was not the firstborn. Judah tried to thwart God's will by selling Joseph into slavery, and that didn't work. Judah's sons, while in the womb, make a similar move. Right. Zerah tries to be born first, forces his little hand out of the womb, but Perez stops him and breaks forth. Perez the younger would be chosen over his older brother and would become the ancestor of Jesus Christ. It's all heady, symbolic stuff, but the point is God's plans will not be thwarted.
There's such comfort in that. God's plans will never derail. It would be so much more fun to know about Tamar's experiences now with these twins growing up in the family of Judah, and how that looked for Judah to play with the babies on the floor and never knowing if he was going to have any grandchildren from his three sons that were,
I didn't think about that.
And she would have moved to Egypt. Right? With Judah, when Joseph brought that whole clan there to survive the famine, she might have had some great conversations with Joseph.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And as a young girl, Joseph, Judah was bad to you too, buddy. And as a young girl growing up as a Gentile in Canaan, she saw firsthand the savagery of idol worship, baby sacrifice, all those things, the temple prostitutes. But now she's placed in a family of Judah and taken away from that idol worshiping culture. And we hope she's able to taste and see how good God really is. Hopefully she began to hear the stories, all the stories they grew up with Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the covenant promises of Yahweh.
Right.
Rich.
How is she remembered in the history of God's people? Both Zerah and Perez would one day have established families in the house of Judah. The legacy of Tamar lived on in Jewish history long after she was gone. When Jewish elders of Bethlehem wanted to pronounce a blessing on Ruth and Boaz, centuries later, they invoked the name of Tamar. And in Ruth chapter 4, verse 12, this is the blessing that the Jewish elders of Bethlehem said, quote, "Through the children the Lord gives you by this young woman," meaning Ruth, "may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah.
What a respectful thing to say about this woman who...
Well, and they knew Ruth would love it because Ruth was a
Ruth was
Moabite.
That's
She
right.
was a foreigner brought
was
in,
out.
and Boaz performed the Levirate vow
Exactly.
by marrying her. He was the closest of kin to keep
Yes.
her dead husband's name alive. So they brought up Tamar to Ruth on purpose.
Right. Oh, that's so
Isn't that cool?
beautiful. It's so thrilling. It's thrilling to see God's intentional mercy toward these women, towards Tamar. It's a very unlikely scenario that her story started for anything good to come out of it.
Right.
But look at the ending, how her story was redeemed. God gave her this double blessing of 2 sons, and she's remembered a woman of great honor. Ladies, you can't go so far that God isn't there, watching every desperate grasp for him, and the scarlet thread of Jesus, of his son, and that blood runs in every direction, backwards, forwards, in every line. What a breaking forth God has given us.
And we're all blessed because of Tamar.
We are blessed because of this woman.
So, okay, application.
Strange woman.
Strange chapter in Genesis.
Yeah.
What do we see here? We see a wronged woman is vindicated. We see a wrong
That's right.
righted. How do we apply it? Well, obviously, God is not ever going to ask you to sleep with your father-in-law in order to have a child. That's over. But we can trust that in the messes of life made by sinful behavior, God is still able to redeem and restore, and his will cannot be thwarted.
I'm just so intrigued by the justice, how much that meant to the Lord, that she had been treated with such injustice. And we hear that bantered around now, but that she was allowed, in his eyes, it doesn't seem like God was upset with her for veiling her face and being a bit crafty.
Right.
Jesus says we need to be crafty and wise.
Wise as serpents, harmless as doves.
Harmless as doves. And it seems like she was both of those things in this story.
She was smart.
She was really smart, and she knew God would bless if she could stay in that family.
She wanted the covenant that
She
Yahweh
did.
provided.
She wasn't running away from it.
No.
He told her to go home, and she's coming back.
Right.
Putting herself right in the line, in the way of Judah.
It's a
that
weird
he
story.
couldn't miss her.
No.
She was very much like Rahab. She was intentionally going, no, you're going to, like Jacob wrestling through the night with God.
Yes.
I'm not going to let go of you till you bless me.
That's right.
That's what it feels like. She just went, nope, I'm not going to go back home and live as a Canaanite. Nope.
Right.
I'm going to get this blessing.
It's very courageous.
Very courageous and inspiring for us to just be intentional with the Lord. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to say, I want the blessing that I know you promised. He's promised it. And we hope this encourages you, ladies. There's that wonderful verse in 1 Peter, is it, Nan? 3?
I don't know where you're going.
Where it says that when Christ came into the world, when the gospel happened, when God entered the world to save man, that the angels never tire of looking at it.
That's right.
It's like a diamond. You look at every angle, some different piece of light catches the diamond, and you're like fascinated by the beauty of it.
That in which the angels longed to
They
look.
longed to look. They didn't realize what God was going to do.
The angels are totally enamored with the gospel.
With Jesus.
With Jesus.
With Jesus.
Treasure, we have to treasure our treasures.
Yes.
Jesus is our highest.
He is our highest treasure.
treasure.
Amen. Amen. Well, Nan and I, the scene we do in our musical from this moment where Tamar births the twins is one of our favorites. So right now we think we're going to try and do this for you. And if you can just imagine, I'm Tamar.
I'm the midwife.
Nan is the wonderful, clear-thinking midwife. I'm going to put a picture of this scene somewhere for people to see online
cool.
on Instagram account.
Oh, good. Oh.
Because it's so much fun. But we hope you enjoy this. Hold on.
Now push. Okay, breathe. You've got 30 seconds. Ooh, you should have called me earlier. You've got twins in there.
Twins! Judah is the father. I need to push. Can I push?
Judah? Your father-in-law?
I wanted the blessing of his God. I was willing to do anything to get it. And I'm having twins. Did you bring the thread?
Of course I have a scarlet thread. I brought everything. I'm a midwife. What'd you think? I'd bring chickens? You do your job, I'll do mine.
Oh, it's time. They're coming.
Okay, then push. Oh, there's a hand. Oh, this is not right.
What do you mean?
Don't distract me. I'm putting a scarlet thread around his wrist. He's the firstborn. We need to be able to tell them apart. Whoops.
What do you mean, whoops?
He put it back in.
Back in?
Are you pushing?
Are you kidding?
Push now. Well, Here comes somebody. Oh, now this is how it should be. Head first. Oh, so you pushed your big brother out of the way?
Is he healthy?
What a breaking forth. You should call him Perez. Okay. Now, the one with the bracelet is playing hide and seek. Lets him decide to be born.
I'll never write you a reference letter. Have you no mercy?
I've never lost a baby yet. You got yourself into this. Now I'm going to help get you out. Push!
God, I'm due to help!
And here's the big brother. How do you like the little bracelet I made you? Oh, you should name him Zira.
I know, it means scarlet. Now give me my sons.
They're healthy and they're hungry.
And it was worth it.
Sons of Judah?
Sons of the promise. I believe Judah's God. I have seen Israel's promise, though deceit and despair have marked my days. Lord Jehovah is strong. He'll deliver his people through 1,000 generations. Love unchanged. So hear my prayer. I too seek his mercy. My sons will follow in his ways. Tie a scarlet thread on his wrist now. Tie a scarlet thread to reveal his God is their God. Tie a scarlet thread. Tie a scarlet thread on my son now. Tie a scarlet thread to reveal his God is my God. Oh, tie a scarlet thread. Tie a scarlet to reveal. Hear my prayer. I too seek his favor. I'll do all his covenant to share. So tie a scarlet cord from my heart, Lord. Tie a scarlet cord to your own. You, God, our God, tie a scarlet cord. Tie a scarlet thread. Tie a scarlet cord to reveal. To reveal. To reveal. To reveal. To reveal. Tie a scarlet cord. To reveal. To reveal.
Join us next time when we look at the life of another woman named Tamar. She's the daughter of King David. If you like what you heard today, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Women Who Dare to Believe.
If you'd like to know more about our Bible studies, our music, and performances, check out our website at womenwhodaretobelieve.com.
We want to thank some special people whose help made this podcast possible.
Thank you, James Hollahand, the brilliant producer of our musical. And thank you, Michelle Marciata, the editor and producer of this podcast.
And thank you, Wayne Gurley, for helping us from the very beginning. to make this dream a reality. And thank you to the best audience anywhere, women who dare to believe.